Hello and welcome to another episode of Full Court Finance here at Zacks. I'm your host, Ben Rains, and this week we're going to be talking about sports gambling here in the United States because, as most listeners have probably heard by now, the doors are open, the floodgates are open for sports betting across the U.S., and we'll get into all that. But before we start, I just want to say, if you have any episode suggestions or any feedback, it is always welcome. So please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcast@zacks.com at any time for, like I said, episode suggestions or just feedback on the show. We always love to hear from listeners. So getting back into it, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down PASPA, which is the Professional and American Sports Protection Act of 1992. It was a federal ban on legal sports betting in the United States. And so the Supreme Court decided 6-3 last Monday. They initially heard oral arguments in early December, and it's basically going to be a huge game changer. New Jersey is the first state that now is going to legalize gambling, and then we're going to just see where it goes from here. But before I get into where we're going and what's happening and who has the best chance to make a lot of money from this, I want to give just a little bit of background. So sports betting in the U.S. and all around the world really helps drive a lot of interest in sports. Here in the United States, the NFL and the NBA are two of the biggest sports to bet on. The NFL sees a lot of interest from not only betting in the sense where you're betting on the outcome of the game, but also fantasy in fantasy football and all that, and then NBA, and then college football and college basketball are also really popular. But you can bet on anything in sports, and going forward, I think that's going to be the theme, is just how crazy it's going to get, that you're going to see people just betting. In-game betting is the new thing, so you can bet on if people are missing the next free throw live during the game. That is going to be crazy. But I want to put in a little perspective of how much money up to this point people expect is bet illegally on sports just in the United States. So the American Gaming Association said it's about $150 billion a year bet illegally in the U.S., but there are also estimates, and this is because it's illegal, so it's a little hard to tell, that are closer to $400 billion that's all illegal gambling in the United States. Just so this past Super Bowl, the AGA, the American Gaming Association, expected $4.6 billion to be bet on the Super Bowl alone, and 97% of that was illegal. So one day, almost $5 billion was bet illegally in sports in the U.S. So clearly going forward, the states that are adopting this sports betting, legalizing it, are going to hope to see some tax revenue and also maybe just some state GDP growing. And the biggest thing, though, is that this isn't legal everywhere yet. There was so much coverage last Monday, and it seems like everyone's rushing to say, oh, now I can start betting. But that isn't the case at all. This is much closer to what marijuana is going to be like, or has been like in the U.S., where slowly, state by state, they're legalizing it. But there's a lot of states that might, at the moment, have no intention of legalizing marijuana or sports betting whatsoever. So New Jersey invested about $9 million since 2012 to get sports betting back in their state. They wanted Atlantic City to be revived and the horse tracks to be revived, and now we'll see what happens if it works. And the question is, when is the first legal sports betting going to take place in New Jersey? And it could be as soon as next week. Memorial Day weekend, Mammoth Park in New Jersey, it's a racetrack. They're expecting to take bets next weekend, and then slowly the Meadowlands, Atlantic City, casinos, and then some sports books are going to open up within the next couple of weeks in New Jersey. And then more than 20 states have some version of a legalized sports betting bill on the books. 4 states, including New Jersey, then also Pennsylvania, Mississippi, and West Virginia, have passed bills already so they can start taking bets in a short amount of time as well. And then there's a next group of states that have bills pending, and that includes California, New York, Illinois, and Michigan. So like I said, in all, there's about 20 states that are preparing to try to have legalized sports betting come to their state soon enough. In some conservative estimates right off the bat, they expect New Jersey could generate about $250 million in betting revenue every year. And the question is, how are they going to make this? And it comes down to pretty much taxes. The states are going to try to tax the gambling winnings and the revenues. And the question then is, how much? So Pennsylvania, who's one of the states that's already passed a bill, they proposed a 36% tax on sports betting, which is crazy high, especially when you consider that Nevada is at 6.75% on sports betting. And this is where things get a little tricky and where you're going to see a lot happening over the next not only weeks but years in terms of how states are going to land on this and how they're going to want to control the betting revenue that's being made. So there was an Oxford economic study commissioned by the American Gaming Association that found that higher tax rates led to slightly higher tax revenue on gaming, but overall then there was a less positive impact on overall GDP. So they're going to have to decide, all these states individually, what they want the tax rate to be on sports betting going forward. Because one of the big problems is going to be if they make the tax rates too high, and I'm going to get on this a little bit more, is that then the black market operators who don't pay taxes maybe become still in vogue because they don't have to then pass that cost on to the bettors, because that's what you're going to see these sports books and these places have to do. If they have to pay a crazy high tax revenue, they might just then give bettors worse odds and things like that. And this is where we get into the problems. So like I said before, sports gambling certainly isn't legal yet, aside from New Jersey, and it's on a state-by-state basis. And the big four North American professional sports leagues, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NHL, they are embracing it slowly, but what they really want is it to be legal everywhere. They don't want this state-by-state thing. They don't want one team or a bunch of teams to have a positive impact from legalized sports betting in their states, and then all of these other teams not. So going forward, they're going to probably still try to push for the federal government maybe to come in and say it's now legal everywhere. I don't expect that to happen, but we'll see what goes on in the future there. And then you have the NBA and Major League Baseball, specifically those two, have lobbied throughout all these states that are trying to pass sports betting bills to implement what they're calling an integrity fee. It's a 1% fee that they're going to try to take right off the top from these sports bettors or whoever taking bets, because they see it as, now that sports gambling's legal, that they're going to have to do more to watch over things and regulate things and make sure their games are not negatively impacted by people trying to change the outcome to make money. And Adam Silver, who's the commissioner of the NBA, has recently changed it and also said more of the word royalty fee going forward, and in some cases they've put that down to a 0.25% fee off the top. So we'll see what that goes on going forward, because the NBA and Major League Baseball and all of these sports, they spend billions of dollars a year to put this product out there that then is being bet on, and they don't want to be seen as somehow they're taking advantage of and all these people are making money off of them. But there's a lot of other ways that these leagues and teams are going to be able to make money, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to give an example of what I was talking about with integrity, because when people think of maybe throwing a game, they think of low-level tennis or something like that, and not guys in the NBA who are making $30 million. No one's probably going to come up to them and say, hey, you should throw this game Tuesday night and we'll give you $5,000. Like that's not what they're worried about. But there are problems that could arise for sure. And one of the companies that the NBA works with currently is called Sports Radar. It's based out of the UK. It's a huge European based gambling service, and they monitor sports books all around the world. And they flag unusual betting patterns. So if somebody that's not favored all of a sudden just gets a bunch of bets coming in last minute, they'll take a look at what's going on, and that's what the NBA and all these leagues are going to need going forward, is these huge tech companies to figure out if there's illegal betting, now that it's going to become much easier for people to bet going forward, especially on their phones. But I've talked a lot at this point already, but I haven't really gotten into the money, and that's what a lot of people who are listening to this show want to know about, and certainly a lot of the companies, and that's the reason everyone's betting in the first place. Besides having fun, they want to make money. So let's get into the money aspect of it. So Nevada sportsbooks haven't had a losing month since July of 2013. And over the past 10 years, though, what's interesting is they've averaged a 5.3% annual profit margin. That's based on a study by UNLV. And that was a little lower than I thought, but I am not that in tune to the world of gambling. So this is where this 1% integrity fee would be taking 20% cut of these sports books' profits. And it's hard to imagine that anyone outside of Vegas is going to be able to turn a better profit margin than these companies, and these wise guys have been doing this for 60 some years in Vegas. So that's definitely going to need to be worked out about what these leagues, and if they're going to continue to push for this, we want a cut of the profits and not just kind of get the bigger picture of people care about the sport more, so we make more money. And like I was talking about before, what they're worried about is having to offer worse odds, because if they have to take less money, they're going to have to give out less favorable odds, and then people aren't going to want to bet legally when they can just get way better odds illegally just as easily as they were before, because clearly a lot of people are betting illegally. So all of this is really, like, it seems like it's going to be so easy, but there are a lot of kinks that need to be worked out, so it'll be really fun to watch that going forward. But one of the leagues who's been outwardly against, you could say against legalizing sports betting, at least publicly, is the NFL. They're the biggest league in the U.S. Roger Goodell has said ad nauseum, we don't really want sports betting to become legal, but behind closed doors, they're all for it. They know that a huge reason a lot of people watch the NFL is to bet. And what they see is this integrity fee, and this is based on some ESPN NFL reporters. They see, like, politically, they don't think it works. They want legalized sports betting to succeed, and they see any fees taken off the top as it leading to it eventually not working out. So what they want is just increased fan engagement, and I think that's going forward what everyone's going to realize is the best for everyone involved. Because if you're going to have people being able to bet on how far the next punt goes, which is what's happening when this gets legal and you start betting on your phone with all this real-time data, you're going to be able to say, I bet this punt goes 52 yards, like over under that. They just want more people watching. And so with all these television deals coming up in the next couple of years or so with ESPN, NBC, Fox, CBS, and even Amazon or Facebook going forward, the more fan engagement means the more people watching means the more money these leagues like the NBA and the NFL can get in their television contracts. And like I've said before, a million times, live sports is now even a better business to be in, because it's the only thing you need to watch live anymore. And if people can now live bet it from their phones on their couch legally and not have to worry about collecting from some random island sports book, it's going to be huge. And now the question we're going to move on to is who specifically is going to make this money, what companies, and I want to also speculate on companies that you might not think of that could also easily get into sports betting because they just have they're already. Well, I'll explain later. So there are obviously going to be betting kiosks you could set up in sports books that could easily open. You could have betting kiosks in bars, gas stations, liquor stores, you name it. That's what goes on in Europe and in South America and all these places where sports betting is currently legal. But then you could also have the companies like MGM Grand, Las Vegas Sands, the William Hills of the world, which is based in the UK. They have the money, they have the infrastructure, they've been doing this for years. They could just start popping up in states that open up or legalize sports gambling and just start opening up sports books easily. So look out for that. These companies could see their stock prices climb in the near future as more and more states legalize gambling. But today, so much illegal sports betting is done on your phone and mobile apps that a lot of these companies who you might not think of have a chance to make a lot of money off sports betting if they choose. At this point, Microsoft and Sony and even Reuters and a few Wall Street financial firms have reportedly applied for patents on sports betting online. There's talk of places like Google, who have massive databases, infrastructure, billions of dollars to spend. They could just easily roll out a mobile device. It's not for sure these big publicly traded companies want to get involved in something maybe as unsavory as betting, but we'll see going forward. Facebook could easily do it, anything like that. But then three companies specifically that Bank of America, Merrill Lynch raised their price targets for because of legalized sports betting, were Boyd Gaming. They operate casinos throughout the Midwest, the South, and Las Vegas. And then also two other companies, International Game and Technology and Scientific Games, which both make gaming software and systems. And those are the companies that are going to really, I think, stand to make a killing off of legal sports betting because so much of it is done online, on apps, and on your phone. And then you have the daily fantasy sites, DraftKings, FanDuel. They have a huge user base already. They could easily jump right into sports betting on a state-by-state basis and just know your IP address, and it won't be so we know you're located in New Jersey, you're allowed to bet legally, here you go. And then an ESPN article I was reading mentioned Twitter, which I hadn't thought about before because that's where so many sports fans at this point are on their phones scrolling through Twitter during the game. Why not Twitter get into sports betting? But that's all speculation there, like I said before. But then what you are definitely going to see is app companies, startup app companies get into sports betting apps. And then these big companies, these big tech companies might not want to be directly involved, but maybe they just buy up these little small sports betting startups and not talk about it maybe. So we'll see about that going forward. But like I said, way too much already. It's all going online. Everyone's going to be betting on their phone. It's not going to be all of a sudden there's 80 sports books in New Jersey within a 10-mile radius or something like that. It's going to be people at their homes, at bars, betting on their phones. And now I want to wrap it up with some final thoughts and some big overarching ideas of what's going forward and just the big picture. So you had Mark Cuban. Most people know Mark Cuban. He owns the Dallas Mavericks. He's on Shark Tank. People go to him for advice. Sometimes I don't think it's the greatest, but he said when sports betting became the possibility of it being legalized in the United States, he said right away that the value of sports franchises doubled when the Supreme Court decision was released. I don't know if it doubled, but maybe. And it certainly makes sense that now you just have so many more opportunities to not only partner with these betting companies for advertising, that just more and more people are going to watch. And this isn't necessarily the greatest thing if more people are going to bet on sports. I'm not saying I'm pro-gambling or anti-gambling. I don't want to put that out there in any way, but more people are going to do it for sure now that it's legal. So there is just going to be a huge influx of people that are watching. There's just going to be more money. When you think about it, the lottery's in 44 states, casinos are in 43 states, even though you kind of think of it as only Vegas. But I mean, almost every state in the United States has a casino and multiple casinos. But I also want to talk about a couple of the problems as well going out. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver was talking to the Wall Street Journal's Jason Gay, and he kept saying the word transparent and how we need to, or the league needs to educate people on gaming and gambling. And because before he was the commissioner, he was going around all around the world to sell NBA TV rights for people who basically all they're wanting to do is watch NBA games to bet on it all around the world. That's what they were doing. And then what they do with Sports Radar is Sports Radar then sells the real-time data to all of these sports books all around the world because everyone's doing live in-game betting. And there needs to be, it can't just be full steam ahead. Let's just do everything possible to just make as much money, because there just needs to be more of a relaxed pace to this. And I think that's why it's good that it's going to be on a slow state-by-state basis. So the states get to figure out what's going on. These leagues get time to figure out what's going on. These teams figure out what's going on. But it certainly does work. Like I've said, it's legal in most places throughout the world. In England, the Premier League, half the teams in the Premier League are sponsored by online betting companies. So you could see that going forward. The NBA has their patches this year for the first time. So maybe in a couple of years, you see some random new sports online betting company on the Cavaliers jerseys or something like that. You could also see, like I said, the UK companies come into the US who have already been doing this overseas. DraftKings, the company that owns Poker Stars, it's called the Stars Group. They could easily flip it and start just taking bets as well as doing poker online. So there's so many companies that could be involved in this, and it's really going to be fun to watch going forward. But I think the last and only thing, if you take away anything from this episode, is that it's all going online. And the companies that are going to be able to make the most money are the companies that have the infrastructure to do it, or create the infrastructure to do it online through either websites or apps or mobile, anything. Just all online. It's not companies that are just going to set up huge sports books where people are smoking cigarettes and betting on the ponies. It's people on their phone. That's how the whole world's going, and that's how sports betting's going. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And over the next couple of weeks, we have a lot of more great episodes coming for you. And one that I want to point out too, that in the next couple of weeks, I'm not sure exactly when we're going to do it, but we're going to do a big World Cup breakdown because there's a lot of money in that. It is by far the biggest sporting event in the world every 4 years. So make sure you look out for that. But that does it for another episode of Full Court Finance. Until next time, I'm your host, Ben Rains. And remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcast@zacks.com.